Hi there everybody, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. This is my final video for 2025, and as you can see, I'm in a different place. In fact, I'm in a different country, different continent even. I'm currently in Budapest, and right now I'm just filming from my sister's apartment. We've been having an amazing time here with my family. Was actually at the Opera House yesterday, but I'll tell you a little bit more about that another time. What I really want to talk about in this video is if I were to start learning jazz piano in 2026 and starting from scratch, but also knowing what I know now after 33 years of playing, I would do things very, very differently. One of the first things that I would do is to simply acknowledge the jazz piano problem, because this is such a massive, massive problem. Number one, the amount of music that's just available now and that you can listen to and try and learn from is just a lot. The amount of resources that are available there, so I'm talking about books, I'm talking about tutorials, even here on YouTube, I'm talking about courses. There's just so much material that it can be quite a daunting task to just learn jazz piano. So I'm thinking already about things like, chord scale relationships. In fact, I've put together a whole list which I'm going to share with you here. So chord scale relationships are something that I have to deal with. I also want to learn the blues. I want to learn bebop. You want to learn theory. You want to learn how to swing. Okay, you want to, although you're learning how to swing, you also want to learn bossa nova because you've got to be a well-rounded jazz player, right? You want to learn giant steps because you've heard from everybody that if you can play this song, you're a bona fide jazz musician. You want to be able to play different time signatures, man. You can't just play everything in 5/4. You want to play 3/4. You want to play 5/4 and all that stuff. You want to know how to play chord changes. But also you want to know how to play outside chord changes so that everyone can make those funny faces and go, ooh, that sounds amazing. You want to learn the jazz vocabulary. I've been going on and on about how jazz is a language. So you want to learn jazz vocabulary, but hang on, you also want to learn how to play in all 12 keys. That's what everyone tells you, right? You want to learn how to comp, you want to comp like Wynton Kelly, and then there's all this terminology. Someone was telling me the other day a certain scale. I've never heard of it, but I was like, whoa, that sounds amazing. Well, what was interesting is I've never heard it, but I actually play it. I think in my mind it's more simplified. It's just a harmonic minor scale starting from a different degree. But anyway, there's all this terminology. I think it was like something Phrygian or something like that, like an altered Phrygian. I don't even know what that was. But anyway, lots of terminology. Time feel, I want to play in good time, but while playing in time, I also want to know how to displace the rhythms, so I want to play out of time. Then there's the modes. You want to learn the modes because you've got to be hip, and up to date and play modern. But while you're playing modern, you also want to play the jazz standards. I hope you can see how long my list is getting, right? It goes on and on. You're playing the jazz standards, but you also want to play ballads. So it is quite a big problem, and ultimately, this is the result. So this information is simply going to lead to overwhelm. Okay, so it's a lot of information, but if we even just zero into just jazz piano, forget the Charlie Parkers and the Clifford Browns and the Miles Davises. Let's just go to piano players. I mean, if you just think about how many they are and how different they are and how big this pool of information is, you could just be like, oh my gosh, what's the point? But it's also important to think about this because the conclusion that I've come to, so if I were to learn jazz from scratch in 2025, because of all this information, one of the first things that I have to do is to decide what's really, really important to me. Not what's important to my teacher, not what's important to the other jazz musicians at the jam session, not what's important to my friends. Oh, hang on, I read about this on the internet and everybody's supposed to love John Coltrane or McCoy Tyner, you know. If you're not into that, it's not your thing, you know, and you probably don't necessarily have to study that, at least right now. So narrowing the information down to the information that's important particularly to you. So if I were learning from scratch, I'm thinking to myself, hang on, who really speaks to me as a musician? Whose music do I listen to and say, oh my gosh, I wish I could play like that, you know? And I remember early on, this changed quite a lot, you know, particularly from my early 20s going forward, you know. So I was thinking, ooh, if I could play like Robert Glasper, you know, he sounds like someone who's got the entire tradition of jazz, you know. He can play whatever he wants to play, basically. But I mean, think about how different he is maybe from someone like Bill Evans, who's got his own approach, you know. Art Tatum, again, completely different from these two guys that I've mentioned, Thelonious Monk. You know, Thelonious Monk, it's actually interesting how he was alive at the same time as Art Tatum. And yet, he wasn't obsessed with, hey, hang on a second, I have to play all these flashy lines, and I have to play lightning fast. He just played like the thing that was really, really important to him. So I think rhythm and composing his own songs, that was his thing, you know, and he just went with that, you know, and we all love him for that. And, you know, he's got these dissonant notes that he plays, which I'm sure to him, by the way, even my cap is inspired by Thelonious, you know. These were things that were real to him, you know. So, is it a cap? Is it a hat? Whatever this thing is. Okay, I love Thelonious. So, McCoy Tyner, again, different, you know. So he's playing his fourths and all these pentatonics and really cool things. Herbie is a completely different beast altogether. Oscar Peterson, ooh, you can't get more bluesy or more swinging than that, you know. Michel Camilo. These are all guys that I tried to play like, you know. Dave Brubeck, because I was like, hang on, you've got to play in different time signatures, you know. Joe, because I'm a keyboard guy, so I love the idea of playing synths. But again, if I were to start in 2026, I'm going to have to narrow it down to who speaks to me the most. So that is the very, very first thing that I'll do. Now, because I've acknowledged that the problem is big, what I now need to do is to create a system that's going to take me to my goal. So I've set my goal. I'm like, I want to play like this person. This is the kind of music that really speaks to me. Now, how can I get from where I am to where I want to go? Okay, so where am I and where do I want to go? So you need a system. You need a step-by-step system to take you there. So I have got this thing that I talk about quite a lot, which I've just called the jazz piano pyramid. So at the very top is where you really want to go. Okay, and for a lot of people, it's either some sort of solo piano playing. So that means you're playing the melody in your right hand and accompanying yourself in some way in your left hand. So that means you're either playing stride or you're playing rootless voicings or shells or tenths or whatever it is that you decide to do, you know. And then you're also improvising while accompanying yourself. So I call that solo piano playing, and this is really what you want to achieve at the top. It might even be playing in a trio, you know. So you're playing piano, your left hand's playing the chords while your right hand is playing the melody. You're embellishing the melody and you're improvising, you know. Sometimes you might even switch those things around. But anyway, bottom line is you want to become a piano player who can do all these things. I consider that a very good goal to have at the top of your pyramid. However, in order to get there, there are several steps that you have to take before that to ensure that you get there. I also believe that without these steps, you can't really get there and feel secure, you know, and sound good. So you have to take these steps, because jazz, particularly jazz piano, is quite a big problem. So if I go maybe a level below that, so consider solo piano playing, okay, melody accompaniment. below that, you want to be able at least to improvise, so what lines can I play? How can I create my own melodies over this set of chord changes? And then maybe a step below that, you want to make sure that you know your chords. You want to make sure that you know your chord progressions. You want to make sure that you understand harmony. So by understanding harmony, I'm talking about, hang on, if you had, let's talk about a song that maybe everyone knows, something like Autumn Leaves. That's usually one of the first pieces that jazz pianists learn, right? So are you able to tell me that Autumn Leaves, in whatever key you're in? And this is where life gets interesting, because I say Autumn Leaves to a lot of my students. Maybe they've tried to play it before, and they'll say, yeah, it starts with the C minor 7, then it goes to B, to F7, then it goes to B flat major 7. And sometimes I ask them, well, what key are you in? And then they go, hang on just a second. And then they try and work out what key they're in. So Autumn Leaves, in whatever key you're in. By the way, in that pyramid, you have to study your keys, right? In whatever key you're in, Autumn Leaves will start with a 2-5-1, and then it goes to chord 4. Okay, so you want to know your song like that. So hang on, the example that I've just given, the person who's playing it in B flat, well, C minor 7 is chord 2, right? And then F7 is chord 5, and then B flat is chord 1, and then you go to chord 4, and then after that, can you safely say that, hang on, this is followed by a 2-5 that takes you to chord number 6? Okay. If none of this is making sense just yet, hang on, I've got a solution for you, and in fact I might as well tell you about it, because these are exactly the sorts of things that I cover in my Jazz Piano Fundamentals course, and I'm going to put a link in the description for you to check out, because this starts from the very bottom of the pyramid. By the way, in 2026 I'm going to make a follow-up course, so basically courses rather, that take you up that pyramid. So you've got the Jazz Piano Fundamentals at the bottom there. And what do we cover? We cover chords, right? How to find any type of 7th chord. Before we talk about extensions and altering chords, let's just know them and how to find them in any key. We cover the chord progression, such as the 2-5-1 that I've mentioned. There's a lot more that we cover, a lot more common chord progressions. Just now I just mentioned a 2-5 taking us to chord 6. That's something that all my students, that's the language that they speak. So when they see a song, they're not thinking about those individual chords, they're thinking about how the song is put together. And speaking of how songs are put together, that's another thing that we cover in the Jazz Piano Fundamentals course. So that you see information in chunks, So like I said, Autumn Leaves, 2-5-1-4. That takes you to a 2-5, which takes you to chord 6. So that's 2 pieces of information there. Not really thinking about chords. This way I can play Autumn Leaves in any key, and then when I go up the pyramid and it's now time to learn how to improvise, I've already got these tools, so because I understand the composition, I can now compose my own melodies over those chords. Okay, so please do check that out. I believe it's very important, and that's a course that really doesn't expire. I still practice my fundamentals. I was listening to, there's a rare video of Charlie Parker warming up on YouTube, and I heard him practicing the fundamentals. I was like, wow, if Charlie Parker is practicing the fundamentals, maybe I should, maybe you should, maybe we all should practice these. Okay, so if you want to get at the top, make sure that you spend time on those basics. So in 2026, I'll definitely focus on the fundamentals. Okay, we said chords, we said chord progressions, and we say the harmonic formula. Okay, what's a harmonic formula that I can give you? So let's say, for instance, a backdoor dominant. Okay, so what's a backdoor dominant? It's a minor 4 chord that goes to flat 7. That's a backdoor dominant. How many jazz standards do we find this in? How many do we not? So that's an important piece of foundational information without which you can't really get to the top, and with which all these things will make sense. So you can even reharmonize, so sometimes maybe you want to go to chord 1. Instead of just playing your regular dominant or a 2-5-1, you might play a backdoor dominant, and that's going to make your playing sound different, more interesting. You can add variety and surprise to your playing. Okay, so not the first thing, but rather a thing I'll definitely do in 2026 is to go to my fundamentals and not just learn them, but I want to make sure that I master them. I want to master these in all keys. Okay, so know your scales. Musician, know thy scales, know thy chords, know thy chord progressions, know how songs are put together, and then you're on your way to your destination, whatever the destination is, that will take you there. Another thing I would do in 2026 is, I actually want to spend a bit of time on this, but it's selecting the correct songs to learn. So I wouldn't just pick a jazz standard because I read about it in some article, or because I heard so-and-so say, wow, that's a cool song, or simply because I like it. I would find songs that have got similar ingredients. By similar ingredients, again, going back to 2-5-1, does song A have 2-5-1? If it does, well, song B has to have those 2-5-1s as well, Is song B in the key of C? Is song A in the key of C? Well, hang on, song B might as well be in the key of C, so that I'm really mastering and knowing this key inside out. So I'll definitely think about my songs. So it's one thing to learn a song in the key of C, and then your second song is now in the key of E flat, and then the third song is in the key of B major. You want to find songs with similar ingredients, songs in similar keys, but also songs that preferably stay in that key. So you don't want to start with a song that goes through 3 keys, and then you've got no idea what's going on. Because if I suddenly ask us to play that song in a different key, if I say, let's transpose it, can you do it, or is that going to take you a while? So I'll pick my songs very carefully. Again, in my Jazz Piano Fundamentals course, I've already done this work for you. So the songs are in familiar keys, and the songs are using similar ingredients. So by the end of that course, you will really understand that key. You'll know its geography. You'll know the chords in that key. You'll know how to go from a chord to a chord that leads to another chord in that key. So there's certain formulas that are an important part of the jazz language and the jazz vocabulary. So very important to select your songs wisely. Okay, start off simple, maybe songs in the key of C, and then you can maybe go around the circle of fifths, maybe key of C, key of F, key of B flat, and then you can start thinking about the key of E flat. After all, I think the majority of jazz standards are probably written in those keys, In F, you can play the blues. Also in B flat, it's common to play the blues. Rhythm changes are in B flat. Standards, many of them in the key of E flat. Okay. I guess if you wanted to go the other way, you could also add the key of G there. So those could be your first 5 keys that you study. And you learn your songs in these 5 keys. 90% of the jazz repertoire is already covered there. Okay, so I definitely choose my songs wisely. Another thing I would do in 2026 is I would listen and copy as much music as possible. So I've already determined who I like, so I'm going to start transcribing that material. And transcribing can mean listening to something and writing it down, or sometimes you just listen to it. I think for me, the benefit of writing down is writing forces you to have listened to this multiple times, unless you're really gifted at just hearing and playing. But there's a process of repetition that happens. So you hear, and now you're thinking, do, you write that note, do, 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 do. Was it da-da? And then you rewind, you listen again, da-da. And then when you've got it, you write. So there's a lot of ear training that happens when you have to write it down. I'm not even really too worried about what I've written when all is said and done. But it's the person you become in the process of writing, or the musician that you become as a result of you having transcribed and written down. That's a huge benefit. But you don't have to write. I don't always write everything that I transcribe. Sometimes I just learn a solo. Sometimes I'll just learn part of a solo, the part that I really like. I can just take a line and then just work through that line and transform it and expand it, try and make it different, embellish it in my own way, change the rhythm, change some of the notes, and just really make the line my own. So a thing I would definitely do is to listen and copy as much as possible, okay? Because ultimately jazz is a language. I did a video on this, by the way, which I encourage you to check out. But it's a language, and the more you listen to it, it's interesting. It's actually mind-blowing how many of my students, or new students rather, come to me, they want to learn jazz, and you try and find out who they listen to. And a lot of the time, they don't listen enough, so they're not really listening to their idols. Maybe these idols actually don't even exist. So if you don't have a model to draw from or to learn from, you're really trying to do, I think, nearly the impossible. It's like learning a language but from a dictionary. You can try it, but I don't think it's the most effective way to learn. Will you make some progress? I'm sure you will, but I don't know if you will sound authentic, or fluent. So listening, extremely, extremely important. That's one of the main things I would do. The final thing that I would do is I would set time for myself to practice. So I would actually set a goal for myself. So if I asked you, what's your piano goal or your jazz piano goal for 2026? Hopefully you've got an answer. For me, I've got my own piano goals. I've got my goals for this channel. I don't just want to go into the new year blindly or just hoping for the best, because if you're not careful, well, 2026 will be exactly like 2025 and 2024. And I know people who've been in the same place since 1992, or whenever, play exactly the same. But it's always like, someday I'll get better, someday I'll get better. So you want to set a goal for yourself, and really go for it. For me, I've always been a guy that's really into bebop, and things like the blues. That's what I really love, and I feel I've made progress in that regard. I haven't really been into the modal stuff as much as I want to. So I love McCoy Tyner, so I'm going to try and get a little bit deeper into that music. Hopefully I will share some of my journey with you and maybe some of my practice sessions on that sort of music as I try and figure it out. So I'm going to do exactly what I'm telling you to do. I'm going to be listening a lot. I'm going to be transcribing a lot. Trying to apply that to all sorts of, to the stuff that I already know, So just trying to bring in a new element to my playing, because I like the way he sounds. So that's something that I'm really going to try and get into. So hopefully you've got your goals too, because where there's no vision, the people perish, right? So let's make sure that we map the way forward. And what are you going to do? Are you going to stay stuck in the same place? Where are you really with your playing? You've got to take an honest look, because before you know where you want to go, where are you? So that you can start moving in that direction. And hopefully we're all moving up the pyramid. And again, I strongly recommend my Jazz Piano Fundamentals course. I'm going to put it on a special actually, maybe until the end of the year. So please be sure to get that. I'm going to take off 40% so you can get it. Just simply enter the discount code Christmas, and then you'll get your Christmas special. Okay, because After all, this is the season for giving, right? So I'm giving you that 40% off. So please check that out. So hopefully you find this information useful. If you can apply one or two of the tips that I've given in this video to your jazz life, I'm sure it will make a massive difference to your playing. It will transform your playing. I'm really overwhelmed by the number of emails I'm getting from people who've either taken my Jazz Piano Fundamentals course or my 90-day program, and even the people that I'm teaching one-on-one. I mean, if you're interested in that, just send me an email and then I'll get back to you. But the big thing that really warms my heart is they talk about transformation and how their playing has been transformed. Oh, by the way, just an additional, so PS, another thing that I would definitely do in 2026 is I would play in time a lot. So little inside tip for you: if you don't have someone to play with, that would be, first prize is, well, find people to play with. But the second one, backing tracks. Okay, in my course, loads of backing tracks for you to practice with. But if not, I'm happy to share some of those. I'll figure out how to do that. Okay, but I've got backing tracks for nearly anything that you need. So I'll share those with you soon. Right, so check out the Jazz Piano Fundamentals course. It is discounted price. If you're not yet subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. From my understanding, or from my audit, about 70%, or is it 75% of people that watch my videos are not yet subscribed. So let's turn this into a massive channel in 2026. If you haven't subscribed, please do. If you like my content, please give it a thumbs up. If you've got questions or contributions, hopefully positive ones that we can all learn from, not like, "Ooh, I don't like your jacket," or whatever, So positive contributions that will all take us closer to our goals. Please do share them, ask questions in that comment section, and I hope to see you in the next video.